In my Nexus 4 review, I actually found it hard not to compare the new official Google device to its predecessor, the Samsung Galaxy Nexus. However, in this comparison, we're going to be taking a look at the similarities and the differences between Nexus past and Nexus present. So, this is Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And this is the Galaxy Nexus versus the Nexus 4. There's one thing you can't deny. The Nexus 4 by LG looks a lot like the Samsung Galaxy Nexus. You have the same features on the front, with the large 4.7-inch screen, the front-facing camera in essentially the same place, and even the notification light found near the bottom. The button layout is exactly the same, with the power button on the right and the volume rockers opposite it. The differences start with LG's own modifications with the design. The headphone jack is actually found on top this time, and the bottom houses the charging port surrounded by the two Torx screws, which seem to have become LG's distinctive trait. It's like a focal point where the construction of the phone begins and ends. Imagine this gorgeous, glass-encased phone being constructed, and when it's all put together, these Torx screws complete the process. The back shows yet another change the Nexus 4 introduces, in which the carrier or phone manufacturer name is done away with and is replaced with Nexus. LG's Nexus 4 also does away with the gray plastic back of the Galaxy Nexus and puts a sleek glass panel covering the crystal reflection design. The result is a sleek-looking black slab that does away with the curved design of the Galaxy Nexus to deliver a beautiful-looking phone that feels great in the hand. Glass makes this phone feel like a truly luxurious device. Okay, yes, this is a pretty fragile phone. A number of users have reported that even a small drop has broken either the front or the back panels. Nonetheless, given its affordable price tag, the Nexus 4 is still one of the best looking phones out there right now. Just take some care with it. The Galaxy Nexus was one of the phones of its time able to support the previously hard to find Super AMOLED display that helped to bring a great viewing experience. It was certainly one of the first phones to get the constant, dang, look how big that screen is, and it solidified that having a screen over 4.5 inches was not only okay for a smartphone, it was going to become a standard. LG then needed to ump the ante by providing their own screen technology in the Nexus 4. Covered in Corning Gorilla Glass, the True HD IPS display has a resolution of 1280 by 768 and is able to bring in 320 ppi pixel density. To be fair, the official measurement of the Nexus 4 screen is indeed bigger than that of the Galaxy Nexus, even if it is just by 0.05 inches. However, the real story here is the zero-gap technology. While the true effectiveness of it has been somewhat contested, I personally believe it works. Zero Gap takes off the layers typically found between the protective and display layers and removes them completely. The result is an even crisper and vivid viewing experience. Also, as LG claims, it allows for better screen responsiveness. I personally found all of this to be true on both the Nexus 4 and the Optimus G, its fraternal twin, so I would have to definitely give it to the newer device for truly improving on the already great display capabilities of its predecessor. The camera comparison further adds to the Nexus 4's lead, as the Samsung Galaxy Nexus honestly didn't bring great quality to begin with. Already brought down by its megapixel count at only 5, the picture quality in the Galaxy Nexus was not on par with most of its competition, and despite quick shutter-to-picture speeds, it really didn't set the bar very high. Which was good for LG, as it was able to learn from this and add in not only the adequate camera that a smartphone of this caliber needs, but one with enough extra features to go the extra mile. As 8 megapixels seems to be the standard count for high-end smartphones now, that's exactly what you get with the Nexus 4. However, the quality of the camera is impressive. It is a very solid performer that creates usable and ultimately very pleasing photos. The new features are due to the inclusion of the newest Android operating system, Jelly Bean 4.2. The camera app interface has been revamped in order to introduce a touch and swipe dynamic that does away with traditional menus. It really is a great way of controlling the settings of the camera, and it feels very fresh. Other than that, the inclusion of Photosphere is a nice addition, albeit ultimately just a novelty. All in all, the camera on the Nexus 4 is a vast improvement from the Galaxy Nexus, and it leaves its predecessor in the dust. As far as performance goes, the Samsung Galaxy Nexus packed a dual-core Ti OMAP that clocked in at 1.2 GHz with a PowerVR SGX 540 graphics processor. What that means is that the experience of the phone was exemplary for its time, and it still remains as one of the nicest experiences in a phone to date. Good memories are abound with the Galaxy Nexus, and the enjoyment was only further enhanced if you ever put a custom ROM on it. Further optimization would be achieved, and the phone would continue to feel relevant even after an entire year of having it. I certainly take advantage of what seems to be a processing package made to go the distance. which is what makes the Nexus 4's own performance feel like such a feat. The quad-core Snapdragon S4 Pro processor at 1.5 GHz and the Adreno 320 graphics processor really make this phone fly. It is hard to deny just how awesome the performance and perceived experience on the Nexus 4 feels. In side-by-side comparisons with my Galaxy Nexus, the Nexus 4 was simply just able to open its apps quicker and load content faster. This comparison just couldn't be one-sided though. As I said before, the torque screws found on the bottom of the Nexus 4 seem to be the start and end of the phone's general construction. As such, the battery is not replaceable. Honestly, this comes as a disappointment to me, as I have become very used to having a spare battery with my Verizon Galaxy Nexus. 4G LTE takes up a ton of battery, and even on days when I have forgotten to charge my phone, the extra battery was definitely a lifesaver. The battery in the Nexus 4 is larger than the one originally found in my Galaxy Nexus, but even if it can typically last a day, having the charging cable on hand will have to become a new habit. The connectivity of the Nexus 4, compared to its predecessor, was perhaps the part of the in-depth review that actually did feel like a comparison. And this is for good reason. The Nexus 4's lack of full support of 4G LTE is already well documented, and I was definitely curious to see how it would really affect the network experience. Now, I am a seasoned Verizon LTE user, and since my area is covered well by the phone company's mobile internet coverage, I'm definitely used to very fast speeds. It really does spoil you a little bit. Which is why the Nexus 4 with its HSPA Plus support does indeed feel slow. Again, my test using a borrowed T-Mobile SIM card yielded the following result. With the Nexus 4 running at full signal strength, its internet was able to keep up with my Verizon Galaxy Nexus running only at half reception strength. I honestly can't deny the difference, and to be fair, I am too used to my LTE speeds by now. And finally, we have the software. Since these are Nexus devices, this is essentially leaving the most important part for last. This is because being a Nexus device means that users are getting the latest and greatest that the Android OS has to offer. Updates will also come to Nexus phones and tablets before all others. The Samsung Galaxy Nexus was the first device to come with Android 4.0.4, designated Ice Cream Sandwich. If a new device was an update to ICS, it was easier to disregard. This was not the only important aspect of the Galaxy Nexus, as its support for developers spawned a community of rooters and customizers who took the Android OS and tweaked it to its own delight. This was true for the Nexus 1 and the Nexus S, and now for the Galaxy Nexus. There was a demand from a multitude of users who wanted their phones to have some features not really found in the stock experience, and to this day, the Galaxy Nexus root and ROM community is going very strong. And I suspect all of this to be the same with the Nexus 4. That same community of enthusiastic software adventurers will likely flock to the newest and so far greatest Nexus device yet and make it their own. But with the Nexus 4's included Jelly Bean 4.2 comes its own revolution. That with its new features, it is now clear that Google has been paying attention to the rooting community. Now features like power widgets and the notification dropdown of custom ROMs are found in a new page that Google put in itself. It's getting easier and easier to choose the stock OS over community-created custom ROMs, and that is a true testament to the Nexus 4. It brings the latest OS, will always be updated, and if you are so inclined to take advantage of how easily it can be rooted and the community responsible for doing it, you're getting a great deal of freedom with Google's newest official device. And so, there you have it. The Nexus 4 is not just a giant leap forward for the Google Nexus line, it truly represents the roots and the legacy of its predecessors. The Samsung Galaxy Nexus was and still is one of the best phones on the Android platform, and the Nexus 4 not only brought the best parts of its past along, it lays down the groundwork for the future. As such, the Nexus 4 is a stellar improvement to Google's previous official device, and is likely to remain so for quite a while. Killer specs, a great form factor, a wonderful screen, first dibs on Google updates, and perhaps most importantly for some, the freedom to modify it to your heart's content, these are all things you can use to describe both of these phones upon release. The Nexus 4 is out now and is one of the hottest selling phones on the market. And why shouldn't it be? It has succeeded in filling some pretty big shoes. For my full written comparison, head on over to AndroidAuthority.com, your source for all things Android.